Okay, folks, it's been a while since somebody has actually requested that I review their comic, and I have gotten such a request from Andrew Rowland, the writer and artist of King of Justice #1. Now, I did do kind of a mini review on the video comic that he had put together. You'll see that review in my community tab of my YouTube channel. And that had to do with a short film that he had put together with professional voice acting by Vic Mignogna, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was the lead on Full Metal Alchemist and has done other famous projects. And it was a very well done film, and I did do a limited critique of that web production. But now I've got the digital PDF of King of Justice #1 sent to me by Andrew, and he has asked me to go through that and make a video on it. And so here we go. Let's see now. We are going to go to the first page, and we are set in the grand city of Liberterra. And the only issue that I'm having right off the bat is I know it says Liberterra, and Terra is often referred to as Earth, but I don't know if this is actually Earth or not. And that's going to come into play later on when we start hearing names and themes that have to do, especially with religious themes, uh, with Earth. But we don't really know whether this is Earth or whether this is another planet that's like Earth. Is this some sort of analogy to Earth? Are we getting the actual Earth in the future? It's kind of hard to say, especially when you see some of the setting that's going to be coming up later. So there's a little bit of ambiguity in what the setting is. And when you start seeing some of the religious concepts that come later in the book, we're going to encounter a little bit of confusion about, well, who are these religious themed characters and what are they supposed to mean to us? So Grand City, I mean, it definitely looks grand. It looks highly technological. It looks well developed, but apparently it's still got its problems. It's got its have-nots as well as its haves, because here we have a homeless person who is sitting next to a dumpster. And we go to the next page, and this homeless person overhears a mugging. Give me your wallet, old man. No, you can't have my wallet. And the homeless person decides to intervene, saying, hey, leave the man alone. And then he rushes at the assailant, and we know that because there's a rush special effect. One of the things that I really don't like is special effects that aren't special effects. They're just the words describing what the things are. We saw this in Yaira #1, where there was a kick special effect. I'm not really cool with these. This may be a manga technique, but it's not something that I think American audiences are going to respond well to. I certainly don't. Wham! He goes right into the guy and thuds back. And now the guy, who has no mouth for some reason. I mean, I thought that I saw that on the previous panel, but I thought maybe that was just a little bit of smudging the pencil or something like that, where it just didn't show up in the final product. But no, he actually does not seem to have a mouth. He also seems to have a cybernetic arm, which he then proceeds to punch the guy into submission with. And then the guy looks at him with this intense stare, and the guy is like shocked by the intense stare. I mean, is that what we're supposed to get out of this? Oh, wait, no. It's because the victim of the mugging has since left. I was thinking that it was the stare. I mean, honestly, he just got punched in by this, I guess, steel hand or something, and he's still looking defiant. I thought maybe that was surprising to the guy. So I probably would have put a little dialogue in this scene saying, at least you're not going to get your objective, or, you're not getting paid today, or something like that, to let us know that it's not the guy's resolve that the assailant is being shocked at. It's actually the loss of his prey. So now he says, you stupid normie, you made me lose my money. And the insult normie is a little bit interesting. It's a little bit of world building here, because apparently he's not a normie, this guy who's saying the word, and normie is kind of a slur among people who are not normal. don't exactly know how this all plays in because we don't get a lot of expanded world building past this on what exactly exists to be abnormal in this world. It looks like this guy is a cyborg of some sort. We also find out later in the book that we've got other kinds of humans with abilities, but we don't really get a good idea of what exists in this world that is of the non-normal sort. But we do at least see that maybe there's some stigma attached to being normal, or maybe it's just a stigma from the people who are abnormal directed at the normal, possibly so. But in any case, that's there. So, guy lashes out, punches him again, knocks him out, and when he wakes up, all of a sudden he sees this glowing apparition. And at first he's just kind of nonplussed by it, and then he's like really shocked because it's an angel. I'm looking at this panel and I'm thinking to myself, this panel is just not necessary. I mean, if you've got a glowing apparition manifesting in front of you, I'm thinking you're going straight to the shock mode. I don't know why you just kind of have a, oh, glowing dude. Oh wait, that glowing dude is an angel? I mean, seriously, do you have like other kinds of normal glowing dudes in the world? So I don't know that I would have had this transitional scene. So the angel is hovering there, and the guy says, "This is totally not real. This is just a dream. That guy hit me so hard that I started to hallucinate." And the angel says, "Fear not, Jaden Theologia. I bring great news to you. Your Lord Elohim wishes to see you." This whole piece of dialogue I would probably get rid of, and the reason being that I always have this problem with panels where you try to fit too many ideas into one thing, and you're trying to fit this guy's shock and disbelief into the same panel as the angel is giving the message. I would probably take something like, "This is totally not real," and put it into the panel where he's expressing shock, because that would be, more. That would be more binding to that particular panel's thought. He's expressing disbelief through his facial expression. You may as well have him express the disbelief through his words there and get all of that disbelief stuff out of the way, so that when the angel presents his message, that message is the thing that comes through with the most force. Now, this name, Jaden Theologia, it sounds like Jaded Theologian. And that makes me wonder if this guy who's homeless is somebody who either was a pastor or a student of religion and has been relying on God but has fallen on hard times. And so, he's probably in the middle of this city wondering, why me, Lord? That's kind of the impression that the name gives me. Now, one thing I would say is that the name Elohim needs to be emphasized in this paragraph, because that's the first time that the name of this god has been mentioned in the book. Like, see me? Why? And I think the issue here is that, you want him to see me, or he wants to see me? Why? So I would put emphasis. I can't talk today. I would put emphasis on me instead of just leaving it without emphasis. You shall find out in due time. Seriously? And I'm kind of up in the air about this. I know this is kind of like a manga contrivance that allows a person to express humor in a short moment, and it actually does kind of work here. I just would excuse me, make sure you don't overuse it. The fact that the angel is being vague is like, it is kind of off-putting. You shall find out in due time. Seriously? Come on. And that's one of the issues that's going to plague this book, is kind of the vagueness of what is going on overall. Elohim wishes to meet you at the tallest mountain outside the city. You'll find him at the lake near it. Now go and meet him. And he stands up. Or has he been standing the whole time? We actually don't know that. And he, plops back down. But the problem is I don't actually know whether he's been standing or whether he's been seated and he's just gotten up. It's not clear from any of the prior panels. I would challenge you to go back and look at the prior panels and see if you can tell whether or not he's actually stood. Because I didn't think so. I thought he had gotten up off the ground. And so when he goes down immediately after he comes up. It just made me think of Tigger. The guy's bouncing. So he falls in his butt in shock and disbelief, and he considers what is he going to do, and then he is resolved as far as he is actually going to go somewhere. But where? That's the interesting thing we're going to see on the next set of panels, because he goes from this panel to that panel, and it looks like he's going in the opposite direction of where he was told to go. This is like a breaking of the 180-degree rule, even though there's only one character in the panels, because prior to this, we had the angel pointing from left to right to say, this is where you go to find God, and then when the angel disappears, he's to the right of Jaden Theologia, and so Jaden's on the left, the angel's on the right, and it shows that left to right is the motion by which Jaden will approach God. So when he goes to the next panel, he's walking right to left. It's almost like he's walking away from God. So that's kind of just a tactical error there. I would have probably put a few transitional scenes of the character leaving the city, and this could have also been an opportunity to give us a little more background on the city, especially what's wrong with the city. What are the problems of the city? What's the difficulties of living in the city? How did he get to be homeless? Excuse me. These transitional scenes would allow you to kind of flesh out his background and the city's background, so that you wind up knowing more about him and the city and the world in which he lives by the time that you get to the lake where he's going to meet Elohim. So he's walking out into the forest, and he's looking back on the city, which is an interesting touch, because he is kind of looking back on probably what is the only home he's ever known. So the idea of looking back over his shoulder is a nice touch here. And then he's walking on a path, and I have to ask, where does this path come from? Because I don't get the impression that there is much transit between the roads, especially with what's coming next. You've got this, a road that doesn't really look paved in any way, shape, or form. It almost looks like it's fit for a carriage, and yet to have a carriage transit between two very technological-based cities, why would you have that? And we may run into that in the next panel, where he runs into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's like, wait, what? Why is there Jurassic Park right outside of this city? That doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. But there it is, and he's terrified that it's going to eat him, and then it decides, nah, I'm just going to stomp off somewhere else. Except it just kind of really, when you look at the art, it just kind of stands there and stomps. I almost wondered if it was counting or if it was signaling to him that it was not going to be eating him, because it just kind of stands there and stomps. It doesn't actually walk away. I probably would have had the head turned away from him and the stomping going on, just to show that the dinosaur is walking away, and that's why he's relieved. And then we have another 180-degree rule violation, because now we don't know if he's been on the path to God at this point. Has he turned around? I know that we're getting kind of a variation in the stuff that we're seeing, but it's a very jarring thing to see him go one direction and then go the next direction. But he's still in progress, and now he encounters a family of dinosaurs, which is kind of a letdown after seeing the whole Tyrannosaurus Rex thing. It's kind of like, why are we seeing two dinosaur things in a row? But there is a possibility that what we're supposed to see here is that as he approaches God, there's a contrast between the solitary predator and the family of relatively harmless dinosaurs, and maybe that's supposed to be a theme about moving from the solitary predation that one experiences in the city toward the communal harmony that God offers to those who follow him. That's a possibility, but one thing I would note is that if you switch the sequence, you could get a comedy effect out of that. You would actually get him encountering this peaceful family of dinosaurs just minding their own business and eating grass, and then, oh crap, there's a T-Rex. It's not all sweetness and light out here. And then he's relieved, and then he can be like grumbling, like, oh, frickin', Elohim trying to get me eaten by a frickin' dinosaur or something like that. So now we have the protagonist approaching the mountain, and we have the lake there that is beneath the mountain, and we have the character standing on the side of the lake. And the only problem that I have here is that the lake is never prominently featured. That is his actual destination. His actual destination is not the mountain, it's the lake. So you would kind of want to have that to be more prominently featured than you do the mountain. I would have slipped in a panel there that really focused on the lake. This head shaking, looking back and forth, like, am I supposed to be seeing something here? It's really difficult to see at that size. It's just an FYI is that it's hard to make that out, that what he's doing is looking back and forth. I think we can see it even a little better here because I've got it blown up a tad, but when you're looking at it in the page size PDF, it's not that easy to see. And then we have these 4 dots that indicate the passage of time. I don't think those I know this may be a manga contrivance, but I don't think those dots are necessary. If you just get rid of these dots and leave him alone, he's just standing there. And then he says, I knew it! I'm going crazy! And you get the same effect. So the dots really don't need to be there. But let's go ahead and put him back and go to the next panel where we've got this whoosh happening before him. And again, we're falling into that trap of having too many things going on the same panel or same page, because thematically these 4 panels align as a unit, but they actually are divided at this point. You've got these 3 panels which are showing him thinking, okay, this has all been one big joke. I'm an idiot. I should never have come out here, that kind of thing. And then the next panel goes into the revelation portion, where I think that should be reserved for another page, or at least another section of a page. Moreover, you've got this bush, and he's standing right by a lake, so it's hard when you don't have colors to understand that this is an eruption of fire and not an eruption of and not getting hit in the head by a water balloon behind him. I mean, bush is kind of an ambiguous kind of thing, and that texturing of the substance behind him, it could be water just as well as it could be fire. I mean, we do see in the next panels that it is fire, and that fire forms into the shape of a being who is Elohim. And to describe the being's purpose, he says, to put it simply, I have chosen you to be the embodiment of my justice. And Jaden Theologian asks very appropriately, what does that mean, my justice? Because this is very important from a theological standpoint. When you're looking at human beings have their own visions of morality. Each person has her own standard of what is right and what is wrong. And when you bring the idea of God into the mix, in the monotheistic paradigm, what you have is a God who authored the universe and therefore knows for a fact what is right and what is wrong, because he's the one who built things, he's the one who should know. That's what authority means. The author of creation is the one who has authority over what is right and what is wrong. And if everyone really wanted to live in harmony, according to the way they should live, they would all adopt this God's same view of morality. They would all have the same view of right and wrong. There would be no disputes between them, and everyone could live harmoniously by living by the same rules. Now, that doesn't necessarily work in a pantheon-type situation. In a pantheon-type situation, you might have a head god, and people might be subservient to that head god, and in that case, you might have harmony. But you also have all these other gods. And what if you have another god who wants to turn all of human morality to his will? Well, that's why it's important for the whole my justice thing to establish first whether or not we are actually in a monotheistic system or a polytheistic system. We don't know that right now because we don't have any access to this world's history, this world's background. It's like there's an assumption of monotheism, but it could just as easily be a polytheism. And if so, who's to say that Elohim isn't this subordinate god who wants my justice implemented, as opposed to the actual god who wants his justice implemented? So I would get rid of, if you're trying to establish the monotheistic paradigm up front, I would get rid of the word my, because you would just want justice to be understood to be proper justice for the universe. So, Elohim tells him, I need you to get into the lake. Get into the lake? How does that work? Well, dude, he's not telling you to walk on water, just jump in the freaking lake. That's all. So he actually does, and he says, so is it supposed to work now? Bathe in the water. Bathe? Like my whole body? What is the aversion to water here? Are you a cat or something? I mean, this is not rational behavior for a human. And now we have these dots again, these dots that are just absolutely unnecessary. You just have him go into the water, and we wait. And then we come up with a big splash, and he's transformed, except this bubble right here gets in the way of the splash to the point where I couldn't really see at first that you've got an L there in addition to the P, because the P and the L are so smushed together that there's no boundary between them. So I'm looking at this and thinking, does that say spash? And even worse, you've got this hyphen that's going on between them, which I don't think is necessary, because that hyphen tends to blend with the rays of light coming down to the point where you think that maybe those are T's. And so I'm looking at this saying, is that spash? Is that splitash? Is that, I don't know. So I think there was kind of a less is more that could have been implemented here. The guy groans after coming out of the water, and he falls backward and passes out, and he's discovered by an old man and his niece. And she says, I just found him like this. What's with the outfit? We need to take him home. He could be dying. Why our house? He needs a hospital. Plus, you can teleport. I'm not terribly sure about this particular point of revealing that she can teleport. I mean, it does get helpful later on when you realize that she does have powers, and I don't know, considering the kind of world in which we live and the fact that we haven't got enough world building to say whether or not such human beings exist to have powers. This could be a good introduction. It just feels a little forced. I don't know a better way to do it, though. Because later on, she does demonstrate that she's capable of creating force fields. And that would just absolutely come out of the blue, were it not for the fact that this guy is saying right here that you can teleport, so we expect her to have powers. I don't know if that expectation would have worked better as surprise in the later scene, or if it's better to, kind of fill us in right here. But it also would help us to fill us in a little on the background of people who have these abilities and why they have these abilities. So part of it just comes from the fact that we're in a vague world as yet. We don't have a lot of backstory. And so it's kind of difficult to tell whether or not this little hint at what she's able to do is actually helping or hurting. Then we have a stomp. And then they're still conversing with this, arguing back and forth with this wah, 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 wah. Now, that stomp reminded me of the dinosaur stomp from earlier on, so I actually wondered if this was the T-Rex having found them. Just an FYI, remember what sound effects you've used in the past and how your reader might associate those in his mind with what you're doing now. Now, as it turns out, this is a human being. But still, because I see this stomp, I'm thinking, oh gosh, is the T-Rex come to eat them? Plus, I would reverse this scene so that the arguing takes place and the stomp takes place after, because what you're wanting is for the stomp to end the conversation. You're wanting the stomp to get their attention, and it'll stop all the complaining. And because this happens in the reverse order, it's like, when are they going to shut up? So a guy points and says, I'm here for him, and after a little bit of arguing, the guy wakes up and he says, let me handle this. And now we find out a little bit about the person who's come. He says, you know why I'm here. Well, not really, should I? My client hired me to take you out. And who's that? Confidential. Okay, a lot of obscurity here. And note that he says, my client hired me to take you out. And you have to wonder, how did the client know any such thing as the events that have just transpired were going to happen? How did the client know that at some point in the future there was going to be a rendezvous between Elohim and somebody at this lake, and this person would be endowed with powers. And why wouldn't the guy want to take out the person before the powers were bestowed? I mean, was it important or necessary that the powers be bestowed first and then the guy be taken out? Not really clear on that. But this guy had to be waiting around and waiting around, maybe for some considerable length of time, because who knows when somebody was going to show up at the lake and get endowed with power. Well, this guy, after he realizes there's not going to be any kind of peaceful resolution to this, he armors up and he pops out these Wolverine-type claws. And the King of Justice responds by doing a shove. I'm going to have a lot of deep sighs whenever I see any kind of, special effects word that just matches what the action is. I don't need a shove sound effect to go with a shove. And then he's all of a sudden tired. It's like he used up all his powers at once, and he falls on his butt. And I just want to say, he seems to fall on his butt a lot. I mean, this seems to be a recurring theme with him, I think. Whether he lands on his butt after running into the cyborg, or he lands on his butt after encountering the angel, falling on his butt just seems to be a habitual thing for him. Now we've got the guy leaping into the air. Another deep sigh. And then we have the girl exercising her powers and using those powers to create a force field around the King of Justice, which attracts the ire of the cyborg, or whatever armored guy who is attacking him. And he says, "Stay out of my way!" And as the King of Justice watches, she gets sliced on the arm. And then we have the King of Justice react, and then we have the girl's uncle react. But look at the King of Justice's reaction for a second. He's got these speed lines that show his head is angling around. His head is already angled around. And I would think that if that were, him angling his head more, his neck would practically be breaking at that point. You can see here that he's got his head turned already toward the girl, and now he's supposed to be turning it more. Yeah, that's going to put his head at an awkward angle. Also, I probably would have switched these two reactions and had the uncle react first and then the King of Justice next, because when the King of Justice segues into the action in the next panels, it will be a more smooth flow. It'll be the uncle reacts, King of Justice reacts, King of Justice physically reacts by kicking the guy into the air, and then he hops to his feet, whooshes past the guy, who is also hanging in the air. Now, I don't know from the prior panels whether he actually has the ability to hang in the air or not. Does he have hovering power, or was his leap, is he still like sailing through the air as the King of Justice whooshes past him? It's really not clear here in what direction the guy is going. If the guy's like actually hovering in midair, or if he's still sailing from the force of the King of Justice's kick. So then the King of Justice propels him down into the ground. That's still not enough to take care of this guy, so they both charge at each other. Another deep sigh. And then finally, the King of Justice lands a decisive victory on the guy. And at that point, he's used up all his energy, so he wobbles, and he falls over again. Except his feet are a little bit too high for an actual falling over. Unless these people are like super short, there's no way his feet go that high in the air. This almost looks like he's like smacking their heads together with some weird karate thing. And in order for him to actually get his feet that high, his shoulders would practically have to be on the ground. So unless this is supposed to indicate a falling out of the air, like he was hovering in the air, and this is like him on the way down, which is possible, but it's not at all clear. And something I have to say, now we get into the notes from the author, so there were a few ending pictures where it talks about the villain of the series, and I don't want to show those because I don't want to give everything away. But I have to say, going through this book was a joy in one respect, in that there are like no problems with spelling, with grammar. I don't know if I ran into one place where I had to look at the punctuation and say, okay, you need some punctuation corrections there. There was a couple of places where I would have put emphasis on this or that word, but by and large, the spelling, the word choices, the punctuation, the grammar, it was all on point. And I have to take my hat off to you on that, because my gosh, I usually run into so many problems with people's writing styles and how they put their words together, that I mean, you've seen probably what I've done in the past, where I'm just looking at the blurbs from the Rippaverse books, and I'm having to reconstruct those. I had no problem with really any of the dialogue that appeared in the scene, except for the occasional emphasis here and there. So really, this was a good job on that, and I regret to inform you that there is a misspelled word here, or misused word here. Aggregated is supposed to be aggravated. This aggravated my editor every time. But that was really the only major word problem I found in the entire book. So really good job on your use of the English language. Overall score, let's compare King of Justice with the books that I have done before. So lowest ranked on my scoring board was ISOM number 2. That was complete crap show. Yaira number 1 came in at above ISOM number 2, because at least it tells a story from beginning to end, whereas ISOM number 2 is scattered all over the map. But it still scored very low at a 4.5. We also had ISOM number 1 and Alpha Core number 1 scoring at a 6.0. And 6.0 is kind of my minimum score as to whether or not I would actually want to see a second issue of the book. I left ISOM number 1 thinking, this could stand improvement, but I still want to see where it goes. And the same applies for Alpha Core number 1. I think there was enough left over from the story in Alpha Core number 1 that I wouldn't mind seeing where it goes. And so I gave those the bare minimum score in that category of a 6.0. And then later came Cyberfrog number 2, which had very good moments in it that propelled it toward a 7.5. So where does King of Justice number 1 fall in? Well, first let's go over some notes. Generally speaking, there is kind of a chaotic world build here. We've got a high-tech, right up in comparison and contrast with dinosaurs. We've also got a combination of cyborgs and people who are powered for some other reason. Are they mutants? Are they sorcerers? Are they what are they? And then we have the normies, who have no special abilities and might actually suffer some sort of stigma, but we don't really get a lot of information about these interrelations. We also don't know whether this is a future Earth or it's an Earth-like world, and that kind of hurts us when we're trying to figure out what are the theological implications of what we're seeing. Who is this Elohim? Are we looking at a polytheistic or monotheistic world? We don't know those things, and that's kind of the next thing, is that the seminary is closed. How do we even know that Elohim is the good guy here? He might be. I mean, everything that we've seen fits consistent with that, but it could also fit consistent with somebody who's been, I guess, demon-possessed or something. We don't really know that this is the actual god of the universe here. We have kind of an any-man hero. I mean, except for the save of the cat instances of stopping the mugging and having, a poor standard of living, what qualifies our protagonist to wear the anointed mantle? I know he's got the name Jaded Theologian, which I said before reminds me of Jaded Theologian, but we really needed some backstory on our hero to give us an idea of why this guy. What is the reason that this guy was picked out among all the other people in the city, of whom we saw very few, to make him into the hero that God would appoint. There's no real rule book on the King of Justice's powers, and so neither he or we are given any guidance to what he can't do. He's kind of a Mary Sue. He does learn via experience that he can't expend too much power at once without needing to recharge, but other than that, he seems to be able to do just about anything that you would immediately expect of some sort of superhero. You know, he's got durability, um, he's got flight, he's got strength, he's got power blasts, and I mean that's great and all, but he just seems to be a generic type character, and we don't know what his limits are, and we don't know really what his capabilities are, and that kind of it does kind of put him in the ISOM kind of category where we don't really know what ISOM can do. And this is probably what hurts the book the most, is that it's got a weak mission and villain presence. I mean, we do get a few pages toward the end where we're shown a little bit of villain types in the book, but we don't know coming in what's wrong with this world that the god of this world, assuming that's who it is, needs this Superman type to bring justice to it. Why, and moreover, why is someone villainous prepared in advance by hiring that hitman for the King of Justice's anointing? So you have a superhero book in which, yeah, muggings happen, but muggings are like not a big deal, and you don't think that, you know, God would send this King of Justice into the world just because muggings happen. And, and that's all that we know is wrong with society, is that there's an occasional mugging, and maybe there's also this, you know, this abnormal class who is, you know, taking advantage of the normal class in some way. That could be a metaphor. I don't know, um, but we don't know why there's something wrong, so wrong with this world that it needs a superhero, and that becomes a big problem for the book. So my overall impression of King of Justice #1 is that, technically speaking, it's very competently made. It feels professional in that there are really very, very few technical mistakes as regards the language. I would definitely get rid of the dot 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 stuff. I would definitely get rid of any of the sound effects that are just basically descriptions of the actions, like shove, leap, charge, those kinds of things. Let the art tell the story in those cases. So it could use some tweaks and an increased awareness of what the writing and art are communicating at various portions. But what hurts the book is that the story just threatens to have substance to it. There's no real substance to it as yet. There's no real conflict for the hero to address other than petty crime. And that seems like overkill for a hero to be birthed into the world the way that he is, especially with this divine intervention. So my overall score for King of Justice #1, sadly, is around a 5.5. I mean, it's really a good book, technically speaking, but the lack of substance makes it something that, yeah, I don't think would necessarily carry the reader over into issue #2. And so I gave it really the highest rating I could, but to still signify the feeling that this is not something I'd necessarily pick up again on account of the threadbare substance of it, on account of the lack of overall conflict that could have been established by just a little bit more world building, a little bit more, you know, explanation on Elohim's part about here's why I brought you into the world. It wouldn't take much to raise this to a 6, and so that's where I think it stands. Now, the one thing I will say is that King of Justice comes across as a, you know, first issue. And knowing that Andrew, from what I've seen, does not have the attitude of an Eric July, say, there is substantial room for improvement. I don't think that Andrew's going to have a problem, given that he's asked for criticism, in taking criticism and using that to take the comic book up a notch. So that is one of the reasons why I feel much more positive toward this book, King of Justice, than I do as any of the Rippaverse books that I'm reviewing, and even the Comicsgate books that I've reviewed, because these are supposed to be professional people with experience in the business who have already put out some kind of comics, or at least have held themselves up to be some sort of authority, and yet are making all these mistakes that I keep thinking, no, I would like a book. I would like the Comicsgate people, I would like the Rippaverse people to produce books that are, at least technically speaking, on the level of King of Justice. Can you make them at least this technically good? Because then the only problems is going to be, how good of a storyteller are you? And so I feel like there is the fact that the Rippaverse and the Comicsgate, they're not as focused on the quality control, the little things, as Andrew has been throughout here in getting all of the English portions right, all the dialogue, all the text, and things like that. That makes me much more hopeful for this book to improve than I am hopeful for the later books of the other more well-known creators to improve. They've made their mark, they've made their niche, they know they have fans, they know they've got fans who are going to eat their stuff up. That applies to Eric July, that applies to Ethan Van Sciver, that probably applies to many of the Comicsgate and Rippaverse related artists. We know we've got our fan base, we don't have to worry about that. But for somebody who's an up-and-comer like Andrew, he knows that improvement is key. And I think that he will hopefully take some of the advice, at least some of the advice, that I've given and use that to make King of Justice #2 into a better book than #1 has been. And I would be interested in reviewing King of Justice #2 when that book does debut. So please do let me know when that's ready, and I would be happy to take a look at that. So that is my review of King of Justice #1. And thank you all for watching. I hope it's been entertaining to get a view of a non-Rippaverse, non-CG book for once. That doesn't happen very often. I do have a few other books that have been passed my way that I'd like to review at some point. I haven't actually gotten express permission from the people who handed those to me as to whether or not they want me to do a video on them, so I'm going to have to get that permission first. But in any case, I will definitely give them my feedback. So if you have a comic book out there and you're looking for feedback on it, or you want a video review, it'll definitely boost your profile and people will know what it is you have done. Feel free to contact me. I am on Gab. Set up a free account there. That's probably the best place to contact me directly. You'll have to follow me and let me know on YouTube that you followed me so that I can follow you back, and then we can exchange private messages on there, because I think that's one of the conditions on Gab now, that you have to be mutually following each other before you can exchange DMs. That wasn't always the case in the past, but and that may be a function of the fact of the free accounts as opposed to the pro accounts. I went Gab Pro for life a while back, and so I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, I don't think. But people have communicated with me saying, hey, I tried to get into contact with you, but it's not letting me DM you, so, what can I do? I wish I were on Twitter, but unfortunately I was banned from that a while back, so that's where I'm stuck right now, is on Gab. But anyway, if you do have a comic book that you're interested in having reviewed, either a video review or just a private, let me give you my notes, either way is fine. Let me know. And because what I want to do is help everybody make the best comics they can possibly make. This is a medium that has been, I think, underserved in terms of quality, and I want to do my part to see if I could at least help shore up that quality where I can. So anyway, that's enough rambling from me. Thank you very much. This has been the review of King of Justice #1 by Andrew Rowland. I am going to have to look and find online where to pick up a copy of this and then put that in the video description so that y'all can sample it yourselves. So I will be looking for that after this video is over. Thank you all for watching. Please do subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos, and I will talk to you later.